Hello everyone. Hey, how you doing? Welcome again to Running Tales with me, Craig Lewis, where we tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. Now, as you know, we are part of the Everyday Podcast, the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Bit of a tongue twister, that one for me today. And you may well be watching this in a number of different places, because if you're watching now at 6 o'clock in the UK, and I apologise, I have no idea what time it will be where you're watching all around the world, but if you're in the UK, you might be watching us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram, because we are across all of those networks, and we welcome you wherever you are. You may also be listening to us as part of the podcast network that goes live on Thursdays after the Tuesdays when we have this live chat. So yeah, listen to us on Spotify and all sorts of things there, because the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network is full of lots of fantastic shows, from Food Fight Friday with Jason Bahamundi and Adam Lee from the Community Trail Running Podcast, which is also brilliant. But I have to say, listen to Adam's podcast, but listen to our podcast first, because that's the most important thing. Beyond the Finish Line with Joe Harden, the Fireside Chat, What's on Your Earbuds, where you can listen to loads of really cool music recommendations that you can then have a listen to when you're out running, and caffeinated coaching. It's a wide array of things, including our own Running Tales. And on the subject of Running Tales, please do check us out on our Substack as well, runningtales.substack.com, where you can buy merchandise like the t-shirt I'm wearing today, and you can read written stories, versions of these podcasts and other stories as well. So that's runningtales.substack.com. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's bring on today's guest. It's Tarne Westcott, and Tarne has got a fantastic story, all about how he's kind of on a collision course with the Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, and he's just done so many ultras, and I'm really looking forward to having a chat with Tarne today. So yeah, let's bring Tarne forward and have a chat with Tarne. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yes,
It's good to be here.
you're so welcome. Tarne, now I want to start off this conversation by talking about the most recent race you've done, because you've just got back from Europe, from taking part in, I think it was a 100-mile race through the Swiss Alps. How did it all go?
Well, it actually went really quite well. I was quite anxious about it because it wasn't my first attempt. It's actually my sixth attempt at 100 miles in the mountains, which I know might sound ridiculous to some, and I know you certainly get people who are well equipped or perhaps lucky enough to complete on their first attempt. But no, I've definitely had my fair share of mistakes and bad experiences, and so I was very certain that this was going to be the one for me. Um, and actually, I've said that each time I've gone. So but I did prepare very well. Most of the effort actually went in mentally preparing, and the physical stuff I kind of had reasonably well in hand. But no, it was a very good experience. Very enjoyable, believe it or not.
When you're taking on a race like that, I mean, I've never done 100 miles. I've done 100K, but never 100 miles, and certainly not through the mountains. Look, it's hard enough anyway without perhaps some of that, that mental baggage from having DNS behind you already. How do you get through the hard times that we all get on those really long runs, when you've got in the back of your mind, I've fallen down at this point before?
It's a really good question. There's no simple answer to that. I had a lot of support. Um, Not physically in presence in resort, or on the course, but I know my family were all rooting for me. I've got a great circle of friends. They were all cheering me on. I got my fair share of messages going into the event, and everybody knew what this meant for me. I kind of hinted. I've had a couple of failures under my belt, and most of the time I know why they have been. When you push yourself to a certain place, everybody's different, okay, and your breaking point is different, and some people can't handle the physical aspect. It's fair to say, for me, I've never really had too much of a challenge in that respect. I am by no means an extraordinary runner, but I've always put the work in around the training, and I've been quite resilient in that respect. But it's when you get to a certain point, your mind starts playing games with you, and sometimes wants to tell you to stop well before your body is ready to. So that is where I put the focus in, and I just kept very positive throughout the whole race. And it might sound very simplistic, but that's genuinely what I did. I removed all of the stress items. Um, like many ultra runners, I guess, in this country, and I assume around the world, I am not fortunate enough to earn a living from it. In fact, I earn nothing from it. I do it purely for my own enjoyment, and I guess why I'm here, or why I'm where I am now, is another story. But I do this for fun, my own ambition, my own aspirations and targets. And so I keep having to remind myself, look, I've signed up for this. I chose to be here. Um, and the difficulty is you have to juggle that with a lot of other things. Work is very demanding.
Yeah.
Most of us juggle family. We're lucky to be juggling family as well. And it's a constant battle. Where do you spread your time? But I was very lucky. I was able to just switch everything off, be selfish for a few days, and dedicate my headspace to it, and it worked out very well for me.
Yeah. I mean, given all of that, how amazing was it to cross that finish line and kind of think, yeah, that's it. I've done it. I've done 100 miles in the mountains.
Uh, it- I did have an enormous sense of relief, but again, it's me putting the pressure on me. Nobody else cares less, right?
Yeah.
Of course, I said my friends and family are very supportive, but I don't think they really truly understand the pressures that I put on myself. And of course, I'm there really desperate to prove to myself I can do it. And so, when I say sixth time, that's three previous UTMB Chamonix attempts. And my DNFs have all been explainable. I'm not proud necessarily, but I do have justifications for them. And two other attempts in other places. So I really, really was very determined to tick this box. And ironically, it didn't give me the emotional satisfaction I think you're hinting at. Yes, it was hugely relieving and very rewarding. But for me, the ultimate is, I mean, I start to get emotional now just thinking about it. I just need to cross that finish line in Chamonix.
Yeah.
For anyone who has never been there, it's just impossible to articulate the atmosphere and environment. It really is so moving and everything about it. So I didn't get that from Switzerland. It's just a shame because it was definitely worth it considering the investment of physical investment, emotional investment in the whole race. But now my sights are set on a fourth return to Chamonix if I can fit it in around everything else. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you probably at some length about UTMB in a bit, but perhaps let's just rewind a little bit and find out how
Hmm.
you maybe how you got into running and doing this sort of crazy running in the first place. I mean, I know because I've spoken to you before after you did a race
Hmm.
in Nepal that we might touch on as well. I sort of know partly how you did it, which was almost through a pub bet, but I don't know whether that's the starting point or we need to go a little bit further backwards.
Well, I always used to. I guess as a child, I used to run quite a lot, and I was never particularly good at football or the other things you aspire to do as a kid. And I always ended up coming back to running, and then I stopped. As I entered my teens and got back into it a little bit early adulthood, and I ended up running London Marathon. I was very lucky to get a place. Um, I've almost applied every year since and haven't been lucky. It's so difficult to get a place at London now.
Yeah.
And I did London Marathon and had an absolutely awful time. Didn't enjoy it at all. And when I crossed the line, I vowed I'd never run again. And that was back in 2004. And then some years passed, and an old friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, Darmesh, who you know, got in touch with me, and we met up in a pub and asked quite out of the blue if I fancied running with him to Brighton, as if there was nothing better to do. And I took him up on his offer, and so we put the work in, put the training in, and I would say, 6, 8 months later, whatever it was, we ended up running from London to Brighton, and we had a great day. And that's where it all kind of re-kicked back off. I did some triathlon, um, I want to say quite a few years ago, 20 years ago, and sporadically ever since. But I just never really enjoyed the swimming. I used to put the work in, but I just naturally am not very good in the water. And so I wanted to spend my precious free time, doing stuff that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I just didn't enjoy time in the water. Plus, I had a couple of shocking experiences taking part in a cross-channel relay, which I won't go into now, but it was one of the most horrific experiences of my life. And so I think that was probably the last time I took part in a triathlon. So I always came back to running, and
Yeah.
it's kind of what I can do. I feel I'm relatively good at it. It's kind of natural for me. I don't. I'm a little bit lazy, if I'm honest, and I don't have to try too hard to run okay. And so that's what I enjoy. I don't enjoy going out with a stopwatch and timing myself. I just enjoy going out and thinking about nothing, and just enjoying being outside and running. So that's what I started doing more of, and and then again, it's easy to fit in around work. You just start to run a little further each time, and you pick a few events, and then the events get longer, and suddenly you're entered into some big races, and it becomes a bit addictive. You know,
Yeah.
you kind of get hooked. Oh, what can I do next? I've done 50 miles, maybe 100K, and then suddenly you've got 100 miles, and the banter with your friends, can't really call yourself an ultra runner till you've done 100 miles, and then it just never stops. So I think the DNFs are telling, because that's when you start to juggle a bit too much, and the running, maybe it stops becoming your priority and your focus, and you use it as a reset and a relax and to clear your head. And as I said earlier, you have to fit it around things. So look, I don't think they hurt. Some cases, the DNFs in my running CV have all been justified. I never feel like, oh, that was so unfair. It's just the way it is. It's just out for a run. Okay, so you just have to juggle things and work out what's important for you at the time. But running's always been a nice source of kind of self-care time, headspace time.
Yeah. I think the DNFs are really interesting actually, because I mean, when you get into the ultra world, it's you could be taking on a 100-mile race and you can do 95 miles in DNF. You could do 15 miles in DNF, but you're gonna have
Hmm.
you could be out there for hours and even days before you do what is, what some, I think, maybe people who don't understand it so much might call a failure. But you can still I guess, A, have an incredible experience, and B, do something utterly incredible in doing just 70
Absolutely.
miles of a 100-mile race.
Absolutely. A couple of my friends who I almost certain know will be listening to this, if not live or on the replay. They know
Yeah.
who they are. They cannot comprehend the concept of a DNF. But Dom and I, we done a lot of runs together, and we often used a lot of the big races to prep and do training. Rehearsals in readiness for the big races. Now, okay, I didn't finish some of those big races, but we certainly weren't going to jeopardize a potential success just because we wanted to finish in a 100 miler. And I actually think that's quite a healthy outlook, right? I haven't ever felt the need just to finish a race for the sake of it, but
Yeah.
use the experience to practice something, or to rehearse, go through the motions. Am I ready for this? Am I ready for that? And so Yeah, I've got a few DNFs, but they don't bother me at all, right? And I have to put things into perspective. Like I do this for fun. I'm not earning money from it. I don't have sponsors or anything, right? This is just about being ready to take on and achieve the goals I want to achieve, right?
Yeah, and we should be, should be fair when we're having this conversation and say that, yeah, you've got those odd DNFs against your name, but you've got plenty of finishes as well, and plenty of finishes at very long races and very tough races. I mean, I don't know what sort of order you'd rank them in, but I know they include things like 5 days across Nepal and also the Marathon des Sables. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean they were both wonderful events. Marathon des Sables was 10 over no, it was 10 years ago. That was when it was difficult. Oh, I'm gonna cause quite controversy. I'm only joking. Anyone who's done it, I'm just joking. Calm down. Um, yeah, I mean, truly rationed water and no phones allowed. It was an amazing experience. Nepal, that was back in November with Go Beyond and Simon Hollis's team. That was an amazing event. It was just wonderful. Very different vibe, very, very relaxed, hugely enjoyable, and so much more intimate, right? And a much smaller group. The care and the attention from the support teams and the crews out there was phenomenal. It was a really amazing event, and no, I didn't DNF that one.
No, well, we should tell people. We should tell people, Tom, because you not only didn't DNF it, you won that race.
I did. It's quite a surprise. Look, we were just going out for. In fact, I was talking to a very good friend of mine last night, Russell, who was also on the pool. And we were only talking last night about what an amazing trip it was. It was I don't know if Simon will appreciate me saying this, but it was almost much more like a holiday than it was a 5-day ultra because it was just so friendly and it was just like hanging out with your mates for 5 days, 7 days, and running through the foothills of the Himalayas. I mean, what's not to love about that? It was a tremendous event and the scenery was just breathtaking. I mean, I think it just everything worked well for me. I found myself moving quite well, and on day one, chasing down the leading lady. In fact, the lead of the race, Helen, and everything kind of started to fall into place after that, and I ended up doing quite well. So I was very pleased. Yeah, a very unexpected victory and almost certainly my only win ever.
Oh, but it's great to be able to say that. And I mean, we don't do these things to win races, and a lot of races we're
No,
never going to be anywhere near the front at all. But
no, no, no.
fantastic to sort of have that on your CV and have that experience as well.
It is. It is. It was a wonderful trip. So anyone thinking of doing something a little bit different, have a look at Go Beyond's Nepal trip. November, end of November time, I believe it is. Very, very worthwhile.
Yeah, fantastic. And as we sort of touched on, you've done a lot of these different events, and we've talked about you going to Nepal, to the Swiss Alps, to Chamonix,
Mhm.
to the Sahara with MDS. Is the traveling and getting to see different parts of the world part of it? Because you could just continually race from London to Brighton or whatever.
Well, that is true. Look, it's I am I never forget the fact I'm very lucky. Okay, I'm in a fortunate position where I can escape every now and then and do some of these races. But look, if I'm completely honest, the races abroad they do offer a certain amount of extra stress because you've got to pack all your stuff, and it's not like you can load it into your car and you're not driving to Dorset or Surrey. Definitely packing for Swiss Alps two weeks ago was particularly stressful for me. But wherever you're running, you see parts of the world that probably 96% of the country just don't see. I mean, and both of my sons have done some running with me in the last couple of years, and one of them, my oldest, he ended up crewing for me, or at least shadowing me on one of the North Downs Centurion run, and he was just gobsmacked by the beauty of the trail. You know, you just drive up, you follow a path, and suddenly you're looking out over the downs in the middle of nowhere. And we often say when we're out running, it's just some of the most beautiful, calming places, and the views are stunning, and you can't hear anybody, can't hear traffic. I mean, that's what I love. It doesn't really matter where it is. I just love trail running just because of the quiet and the silence and the scenery, just the countryside. It's just really nice, right? So that's definitely one of the drivers for me. But of course, when we go abroad and you're in the mountains, you spend most of your time with your jaw on the floor. When when I went out to Switzerland last week, I used the Wednesday to get all the camera, the photo taking out of the way, get it out of my system, right? I get up to the top, have a look around, try and acclimatize, and take all the photos that I want because your camera's got to go away. When you're actually running those races, there is an element of a huge amount of extra care you have to take with you. You know, where you're putting your foot and looking out on the trail. It's also much more demanding, so you can't be running and taking photos, else you do risk falling down, right? So wherever you are, though, just appreciating your surroundings and looking around you, just taking time to absorb, and specifically, that was one of the things I said I was going to do out in Switzerland was keep my head up, make sure I'm looking around and soaking it all up. Do not run the whole race looking down on the floor,
Yeah,
blood coming out of your eyes. There's no point, right? I mean, what
yeah,
am I proving? And I'm jeopardizing a finish. It'd be much better off to do what you can, be realistic, manage your resources, keep the food going in, and enjoy the experience. Right? That's what it's about for me.
yeah. No, I think that's so true. I was writing a piece earlier about a race I did in Derbyshire. It's the Dovedale Dash. It's called. It's absolutely crazy. It's through mud. You actually run through a river. It's only 4.75 miles long, but I think it's harder than the 100K I did. It's an insane race, but it is in an absolutely beautiful part of the world, and I'm really happy that
Uh-huh.
when I did that, although I kind of went as fast as I can, which isn't very fast, I also looked around and enjoyed that race because I think if you don't do that, unless you're that person who's an international or paid for athlete, what's the point? Enjoy what you're seeing
For
because
sure.
it's so spectacular.
Absolutely, for sure. You know, being present in the moment and really enjoying those experiences are what it's all about. And actually, on that note, quite often it's the training and the preparation and that those journeys in their entirety
Yeah,
that build up the memories that you kind of look back on. The race only ends up being that much of your experience. Obviously, Switzerland was truly tremendous. It really was amazing and demanding, like I've never experienced anything like it. But still, a very rewarding and memorable experience.
yeah. And you mentioned with some of the trips abroad and so on, and with Switzerland as well, sort of some of the kit you have to take for people who've
Mhm.
maybe not taken on those kind of races. What do you have to take with you? I mean, are you taking poles with you and then a massive backpack? What sort of things are you taking?
Well, I mean, these in itself are almost entire topics and conversations. It's good. It's a good question, actually. So, I went through a couple of iterations of what I might use or might not take, and then you question yourself: Have I made the right call here? What's the weather going to be like? There's so many factors that go into deciding. I ended up going with my trusty Salomon 12-liter vest. Um, I was quite ruthless this time. I've got a history of packing too much stuff just in case I get cold, putting that puffer jacket in, putting that
Yeah,
extra top in. I mean, look, it's not unreasonable. When you're quite remote and pushing yourself to the point that you might have to stop, or certainly over terrain that you could trip on, you've got to allow for the fact that you might be sitting in the cold for a little while, and that is not a good scenario at 2,500 meters, or on the Dorset coast, or anywhere at night in the rain. So I've always been one to err on the side of caution and pack for the what if. I'm certainly not going to go out with bare minimum. But what I did do in Switzerland was I was quite ruthless. The bag drop arrangement was particularly good. So I just made sure I had spare kit. I mean, literally spare change of clothes for any eventuality in each bag. I had food, I had emergency supplies. In one bag, I had like a mini first aid kit. I did take spare poles. I ended up snapping one of my expensive licky poles quite unexpectedly. Apologies, I hope that hasn't disrupted the call. My phone is ringing.
All good, all good.
Good.
Oh, it does look after me saying all good that we've temporarily lost Tarn, but hopefully he'll be coming back soon. Pole firmly back in place to help him across the Swiss Alps as quickly as possible there. So yeah, let's hope Tarn gets back quickly. I'm really fascinated just talking about my own experience of carrying a load of kit. It's not something I've done on a load of trips, but I did do it on the Isle of Wight Challenge, which was a 100k race I've done. And you have to choose, I think, so carefully what bits of kit that you take and don't take, because you it can be too hot, it can be too cold, and you never know what happened. Tarn, you're back. I did lose you for a second in the end there, but that's no problem. We just got to the point where you've unfortunately snapped one of those valuable poles, but you're
Yep.
trudging on.
Sorry about that. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you well. Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, I ended up stumbling. I think it was at night. Snapped one of these poles, so I just had to shove it in my quiver. And amazingly, I'd packed a spare set of poles, which you might think was quite frivolous to have spare poles. You just accumulate kit over time, and you just don't want to take chances. And so I didn't end up using them, but I had spare torches. I even packed spare trainers. Now, I'm not one to change my trainers mid-run. I took a bit of a gamble with my shoe choice this time. But again, going into the event, I knew the weather was going to be good for, if not the whole event, at least 95% of it. So yeah, kit choice and packing your kit for an event is very important on an event like that. And of course, I have been running for a long time, you accumulate stuff and you work out what's the stuff you keep to hand, and all of that went with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love conversations about kit, because it always makes you realize how much of a lie the old comment that all you need to do is get a pair of trainers to go running.
No, it's not. And in fact, back to the topic previously we covered. One of the things I did was try to make sure I didn't have anything to stress about at all. So I totally disconnected from work. I love my job, but it's very demanding, and I just had to make sure I was severed from it. Um, I had to make sure nothing on me was going to cause me aggravation. So, charging batteries, I just got rid of anything that was going to need charging. Um, I just needed it to be simple, simple exercise, and there'd be no faff, so I could genuinely just enjoy the process. And I didn't have to remember anything. It really turn up. Oh, your kit bag's here. Great. Take the food that's in it, and off you go. But yes, packing. Going back to our original point, packing for an ultra or a big event abroad always poses extra stress.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you spoke a little bit earlier about your friends thinking you're mad to do the long distances. We've spoken about the positives and the negatives of packing all that kit and so on. you know about the DNFs that can happen along the way when you're taking on these really hard challenges? Do you ever not sort of think I'm going to do a half marathon? Is that not you just not into that kind of running?
Um, well, no, again, I mean, I hinted earlier, there's an element of me that's quite lazy. I don't like the timing and the whole. If I end up doing a half marathon, I know what I'm like, and I'm going to end up wanting to do a quick half marathon. And then
Yeah,
where does that stop? Now, having said that, on my run up to Switzerland, I did um, I did quite a varied set of training. I really mixed it up. I ended up doing bike time, sprint time on the treadmill. I did incline walking with and without weights, uh, walking to and from part of my commute for work, and I ended up doing long runs home from work as well. So I did a bit of everything, and I have to say I did enjoy getting back into the whole sprint cycle and gradually building up. Um, Both of my sons are quite quick, and that's kind of inspired me maybe to
yeah,
redirect my efforts now that I've got Switzerland out of the way, you know, on the rundown in towards Christmas as it gets darker and start doing some faster times on the treadmill. But no, really, no. To answer your question, I love the long distance stuff. I love being out on the trail. I don't really have any interest in banging out 13 or 26 miles on the tarmac. It's just not my thing. And you know, even the shorter runs. A couple of friends, Russell again, he said, "Well, you know, why don't you look at doing some of the shorter events in Chamonix?" But for me, it's just not what I want to do. You know I've got it in me to do the full distance, physically and mentally now. So that is my goal. That's what I want to do. And no, so the shorter distance stuff doesn't really grab me.
yeah. Well, that brings us quite nicely, actually, doesn't it, onto Chamonix and UTMB. I mean, it's a huge thing to take on UTMB because it's not just the event itself, and it's not even just the training because you have to do all the other qualifying events and everything else
Yeah.
to get ready for it. Did at what point did you sort of think this is what I really want to do, and I'm going to go all out for UTMB?
And I think it's fair to say when we first entered, I think our first entry was 2016. We had really no idea what you're headed into in terms of extreme. And by that point, we'd done some hard events. We'd done some, you know, quite a few 100 milers,
Yeah,
and most of them had gone very well, actually. But nothing can really prepare you, certainly living in Hertfordshire, for climbing 10 kilometers of, you know, of mountain and descending 10 kilometers as well, while also trying to feed yourself and deal with temperature extremes. The reality is that this, you know, where we are in and around London, you're just not equipped to train or prepare for that. And look, I make no pretense. Running's not top of the list. For me, it's enjoyment and what I do in my free time, truly. Even my
yeah,
training just has to fit around other stuff. And family are up there, top spot. And anything I do in regards to training, it just gets crammed in when there's an opportunity. So I'm not somebody who can jump on a plane and go and train in the mountains, you know, every opportunity. Well, actually, I would do if I could get away with it, but I can't. I can't. Um, and so when we first turned up in Chamonix, it was just, what on earth is this? You know, and for anyone who hasn't experienced UTMB, it truly is magnificent. It's and you know, you touched on it. It's not a straightforward process to end up in Chamonix. You have to, you know, tick a few boxes. But to be honest, it's a little easier now than it used to be, because you used to have to do three qualified events at least to get enough points. But now it's based on stones, so your stones just equate to the weight that your entry has in the ballot. So you could
yeah.
just do one. You could just do one event, a qualifying event, and have an index, and you'd be eligible to enter. Um, But yes, we went through the pain of qualifying and re-qualifying back in the day when it was very difficult. And you're looking at, for me, you're looking at fitting them in over a 2-year period. You don't just accumulate and acquire those points over 6 weeks, right? It's a big deal, big undertaking. But we just weren't really prepared for what it would take, and quite frankly, hit halfway, probably an hour before the cutoff, and just hadn't eaten enough, and then the time starts to run, and then you're out again in the heat, and you just lose time, and it's very, very tough, but it is achievable. The thing about Chamonix is it's just so addictive because of the atmosphere. It's so wonderful. You're in such a beautiful part of the world, and everyone's just so friendly. I mean, it's not hostile at all. The buzz, the atmosphere, it's just electric. But the very start on the Friday night, you leave Chamonix at 6:30 and you head along almost on the flat. It's probably the flattest part of the course to Les
Yeah.
Houches, and then you climb. You climb and up and over to Saint Gervais, and that in itself that's at least 3 hours before you hit Saint Gervais, and you're tired, and you think, wow, okay, I'm only at the start. I'm not even 10% of the way through this race. And you look at the map, you look at the profile, you've been studying it for weeks, and what you think is this gentle ascent to Les Contamines is actually brutal.
Yeah.
It's tough, right? And the pack, you're moving in this train of runners. There's no slacking. You're pushed hard, and so you get to Les Contamines around 11, between 11 or 12, 12 a.m. that is on the Friday night, and you're in shock. This is on your first time, right? You are
Yeah.
in shock. But that's part of it. And of course, I've done that 3 times now, so I know. I mean, you go to love it, and you actually those cutoffs, they don't phase me. You used to be so stressed when you're so close to the cutoffs, but now with experience, you kind of smile about it. Well, look, I know I'm going to hit that cutoff within 30 minutes of it, 40 minutes. No big deal. No big deal. Just got to keep doing, keep going, drink, eat, go.
Yeah. So when you did it that first time, you were perhaps a bit underprepared for exactly what it was. You, by the
Mhm.
sound of it, hit some of those slopes and reached a shit. What the hell have I done? thing moment. When you had to drop out, was it instantly I'm going to do this again, or was there a moment of sod it, I had to go, but
I think certainly for me, the first time I was so frustrated because you wake up the next day, you've not got a single ache or a single pain. There's no, you kind of I'd at least like to not be able to walk for a day, right? But it wasn't the case, and that is the killer. You think, I just messed up. I just messed up. This is easily doable. I've got to come back. So there was never a doubt, first and second time. The second time I went, I was so sure I was ready, and I made such a dumb mistake. Um, I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it, really. But I'd gone through a phase of really, really wearing my trail shoes in a relaxed state. And the problem is, on the descents, your feet just slide.
yeah,
And I ended up with the most horrendous blisters. They didn't develop straight away, but the damage had been done within the first couple of hours. And I ended up, I made it to halfway, but I was so upset with myself, right? Again, it's the pressure that I put on myself. No one cares. No one cares. And my family are like, don't worry. You did your best. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I made a stupid mistake. So realistically, I was always going back. I just
yeah,
it just demands so much focus and prep. You do end up exhausted mentally from it. And again, I know it's all self-induced, but you care about it. You invest effort, and it's something you're doing for your own satisfaction. It does just leave you tired. So I definitely needed a break afterwards, and I think the first and second time, I didn't have any points left, and I missed the boat, and so it's back to square one, which is even more annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. You talk about the blisters and all that sort of thing, and making a silly mistake. But I mean, you'll know this with the number of races you've done successfully, and with the odd
Yep.
DNF. But there is so much that can go wrong when you're taking on those long races, isn't there? And sometimes you can think, oh yeah, that was a mistake that I've now been able to realize what it was. But other times it's just down to freaks of nature or something odd happening on the course, and or a body part giving out or getting
You
hungry or what. Yeah,
it's very true, because I mean we're quite meticulous. We kind of keep a spreadsheet of all the kit and what we collated for each event and what the conditions were like. But because we're doing this for fun and it's a bit sporadic, we find
yeah,
sometimes you're relearning something that you actually learned 5, 6 years ago, and you think, "Oh my God, how did I forget that?" Right? It's
yeah,
so dumb. Um, but chafing or this or that, and just silly stuff. But you're absolutely right. Again, sorry to bring it up again. Switzerland. As I left, people saying, "Oh, good luck, good luck," and I said, "Look, I don't need good luck. Genuinely, all I need is no bad luck,
yeah, yeah,
because I've got everything else covered. I absolutely know what I need to do. I just need to not get upset stomach, or I just need to not fall or something like that, right? But you're right. Over that distance, when you are literally depending on your supplies in a 20-liter bag that's sitting 20 miles away, you just need to have no bad luck.
yeah,
But again, it's part of the adventure, isn't it? It's part of the fun, and that's why we do it. I think most of us do it because we just love that sense of adventure, and like, I've got to get from here to here, and I've got to do it under my own steam, and I've got to navigate, and I've got to feed myself, and can I survive the heat, and can I get enough sun cream on to not get burned?
yeah.
It's all part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And you spoke about the Swiss Alps there and not wanting it. I mean, you did actually have with the pole snapping, you did have that bad luck, but fortunately, or thanks to your planning, you had taken that second set of poles because I imagine if you hadn't, then
Well, I
that
didn't. I didn't end up using them actually, Craig. At the time, so I ran Switzerland with a friend of mine called Colin Henderson, and he said to me afterwards, I was quite impressed with how matter of fact or dead certain you were. Because I said to him at the time, "Oh, dude, can you just stick with this pole? I've broken it." And he wanted to help me. He's like, "Oh, okay, should we fix it? Should we tape it up?" I was like, "There's no point. Just stick it in. Let's go."
yeah,
And at the time, I didn't even think about it. It was for me, look, it's no point. It's broken. There's no point dwelling on it. Just crack on. Now, of course, if it had been my watch that I'd fallen over and smashed, that would have been a problem, because I think my watch was probably the most prized tool or possession I had on that entire event. And it's good to be able to follow, how many more kilometers you've got to go to the next checkpoint, etc. I mean, I'm sure I'm telling you stuff, um, but if it's your trainers that fail, you're ruined. But
yeah,
ultimately, I just thought at the time, look, there's nothing I can do. It's broken, and sure, of course, I wouldn't tackle an event like that with one pole ordinarily, but I had no choice, and I opted to not pull the other pair of poles out from my bag. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. So yeah, it's kind of pointless packing them.
Well, I guess they were there if it had have got really gnarly and you'd have been struggling at at
Yes,
that stage. It's nice to know that you've got those things to back you up sometimes, isn't it?
sure, sure.
So where are you now on the UTMB journey? Are you having to do more qualifying races? Are you booked back in to give it another tilt?
Well, luckily, I have stones, and I have an up-to-date index thanks to last weekend. So I will put my name into the ballot, and hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, I haven't been lucky enough to ever get a ballot place, so I'm not sure anything will change this time round. But I will. I do. That's where my attention is. That's really where my heart is. I want to go back next year, Again, I've got some friends who are due to, Russell and Ilza, his wife, are due to go back next year for probably a CCC attempt. And that's really where we are right now. I've got a couple more events in the calendar between now and the end of the year. There's Centurion 50 Slam events, which are going to be quite enjoyable. I've never done either of the two courses that we've got coming up. I think one is Chiltern Wonderland, which is next month, and then November. I forget the course that we're doing in November. But look, they're good fun. I don't mean to sound complacent, but we do those. We just enjoy doing those events. Again, it's just a, a great group of people. We have a good laugh. It's a really nice day out in the countryside, and of course they're difficult. They're challenging events. But a 50-mile event is very much more manageable than trying to plan for something that spans 2 days.
Yeah, and the as you've sort of adhered to the putting a huge mountain in the middle of it doesn't really help either, does it?
Exactly. So really, I just want to keep those kind of distances going. Hopefully, run with Go Beyond again in January at the Country to Capital event, which
Yeah,
is quite a regular one for us. And yeah, and then we'll see. We'll have to try and get something scheduled for early next year. So I've got something to keep me focused and something to aim for.
mm.
But
For
other than that, nothing else big. No other big races.
yeah,
A few of us are going to be at the Arc UTMB Arc of Attrition, a 50 miler at the end of January, which is going to be something to look forward to. I have been fortunate enough to finish the 100-mile distance at the Arc of Attrition, which is not something I ever thought I would enter willingly, because I'm not really a big fan of the cold. But again, a friend of mine, Russell, he talked me into that, and we ended up doing quite well. It was quite a good experience. But that's another beautiful part of the world.
yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see with the new management of the Arc of Attrition. It's now part of the UTMB series or UTMB family, so be interesting to see how that changes the event. No,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
gener
you're obviously a huge fan of UTMB itself, but what do you make about the wider influence of UTMB as a commercial organisation? Because it's quite a controversial subject,
Mhm.
really, in some circles, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a huge fan. It's just that they are responsible and they manage that pinnacle event in Chamonix.
Yeah,
And they certainly have a recipe that seems to be quite popular. And now they're picking up and rolling out I guess their pattern and their management across the globe, their partnership with other races. Look, it works. It seems to be working well. I know it's a topic that has generated quite a lot of noise online, and certainly some of the Facebook groups. People are so unhappy about it, but I, I've got other things to worry about. I didn't really get too drawn into it, and I know people felt very strongly about it, but it didn't really bother me too much. Uh, for me, it all boils down to is an event, is it attainable? Can I enter it? What do I need to do to enter it? And is it going to be worthwhile? Do you get good value for money?
yeah,
Um, in this country, that there are some race organisers that charge a lot of money for doing an event, and then you've got other very much more modestly priced, cheap and cheerful events that sometimes work out so much better.
yeah,
Um, Again, I have no particular desire to chase the name or the brand. It's more about the event, and actually for me, it's all about Chamonix, Mont Blanc, and crossing that finish line.
mm. And being part of crossing that finish line, I guess, as part of that community, which I suppose has sort of given you such enjoyment along the way.
hmm Yes, that's true. I mean, so over the years, kind of my reason for why I run has changed, and you start off chasing that. Oh, can I do that? Can I? That's something that looks really cool. That's very difficult. I want to do that. That's a bit harder. Wow, I'm suddenly running 100 miles. And then maybe your focus changes a bit and work takes back over, and you end up slotting the running in rather than making it a priority. So you go for a little while where it's your fallback, if you like. You're using it to recover from work, and that's definitely a time when you're not going to achieve your best results and get all those finishes. But then it doesn't matter, right? It's you got to remember why you're doing it, and as long as you align your objectives with what you're actually doing, then it's not a big deal, right? It's not a problem. But I will definitely make sure I step up and get my training back in order, and I refocus as we go into next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and this is a question that might sort of change the tone of the conversation. It kind of depends on what you answer it as initially. But when you're out training, when you're probably training more than doing the actual events,
Mhm.
do you listen to music? Are you a person who has music in your ears while you're out there?
Um, I actually don't often listen to music. I like to just enjoy
Yeah.
listening and um, I might listen to the odd podcast occasionally, but it's very, very rare. And I did take headphones with me in the mountains last weekend, but they are for emergency. I mean, they really are. Or if if things got so bad, I needed some total distraction. But other than that, no, I tend to not. I really do just love listening to the sound of nothing. And
Yeah.
I mean, I
Oh,
don't
well,
know.
I,
Is
I,
that
I
weird?
love that. I love that. Well, no, I'll explain the sort of reason for that question, and there might be a supplementary where I can drag something out that will work for what I was asking. I mean, I love the idea of listening to nothing. I'm terrible at it though. I get caught up in my own thoughts, so I have to listen to a podcast or music because I don't want to listen to myself for too long. But
Mhm.
the main reason I ask is because we have a show on the network called "What's in Your Earbuds," which some people might have listened
Okay.
to, and it's all about the sort of music that people do listen to when
Mhm.
they're out running to encourage them along through runs and so on. So I guess my little extra attempt to draw something out of you might be in those sort of dark moments where you do need a bit of music. What do you turn to? Because we've got a podcast playlist on Spotify, and we like to add these songs to that playlist if we can.
Yeah, I've got such an enormous dance and house music collection. I mean, it varies from early 90s right through early 2000s. I mean, just some absolute classics. And so that will often be a go-to if I do put the headphones on. Um, yeah, stuff that doesn't require me to have to think or work too hard at listening to. With a good strong beat. Certainly if I'm cycling or sprinting, that I would definitely put music on, yeah. But if I'm out on the trail, it's very rare. But yeah, dance music is almost a dead cert. That's a bit generic answer for you. It's probably not what you wanted, is it?
No, that's
You wanted to hear Shakin' Stevens or the Bangles, did you, or something like that?
Oh, everyone likes a bit of Shaking Stevens. No, no, anything. It's quite an eclectic list. There's some really weird and wonderful stuff on there actually, but it does have a few more dancey bits in there too along the way. When you're doing that, just a thought that pops into my head. I mean, you sort
Mhm.
of say that you might do. Obviously, I get it when you're sprinting and training for that. But if you're in a hard period and you put that on, is that just to keep you going forward, or that will you go right? I'm just going to run for a bit now that I've got this music on.
I think it's more of a distraction, and if you put on something familiar,
Yeah,
I having said what I just said, Craig, I did on MDS listen to music on some of the toughest parts. And
yeah,
when I say toughest parts, I actually ran out of water a number of times in the Sahara. Water back then, it genuinely was rationed. You were given your allocation, and that was that.
Yeah.
And I know that's not quite the case now. You can pretty much have as much as you need. So I understand. But if you ran out of water before you got to the next checkpoint, that was it. And you're talking about running in up to, for us, up to 50 degrees heat. It's quite brutal carrying a pack with everything you need for that week, including all of your food and your sleeping gear, in sand that just is giving way beneath your feet and sliding around. I mean, it's soul destroying, but equally wonderful. Okay, but in some of the dark moments on that journey, I definitely listened to music. And if I listen to that same playlist, I've still got the same playlist today. I can still picture moments of climbing some of the sandy dunes, and it just for me, that's magic, right? I just love that, and that's quite often where it takes me. If I put my headphones on, I'll be able to glimpse where I was when I heard that during tough times, right?
Yeah. Are you able to say what's been harder, like MDS or UTMB? Or is that an
Um,
impossible question?
well, I think it's very difficult to compare them because
Yeah.
the temperature in the Sahara is really tough. Having said that, apart from the long day, I don't want to sound that sound makes me sound like an arse, but you're only really running a marathon at most a day, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And most of it is flat. It really is. Most of it is flat, apart from the odd hilly dune. I have genuinely never done anything as tough as Arc of Attrition, which I finished, and that's because of the cold and the wind and the ups and downs and the terrain,
Yeah.
and equally running 100 miles in the Alps. There's nothing that has come close to those two things. And I'm very lucky to have been able to do both. And I keep looking. I keep looking for the thing that will just test me a little more. But you know, setbacks come along the way, and you get knocked back, and you figure out, well, how do I address that? And now it's not the thing that breaks me that I'm interested in. It's just how can I be better and finish this? That's what I'm looking for now. How can I
Yeah.
be better? How can I be stronger?
And just very quickly, finally, what would the Tarn that struggled so much at the London Marathon or didn't enjoy the London Marathon so much and thought, I'm probably not going to keep going this on this running lot, what would he think of what you've become and having done all these ultras and taking on these incredible
Well,
events?
I think I'd be surprised. I think I'd be in shock, right? Um, Again, I didn't enjoy that 4 hours hard and fast on the tarmac. But you often lose sight of what you've done and what you've achieved, and you get so swept up in stuff, life, work, that you forget about, hang on a minute, look what you've just done and look what you've been doing. And it doesn't hurt every now and then to keep your head up. And again, I'm lucky people around me say, look, wake up, dude. Come on. Don't give yourself such a hard time. Look what you've just done. But my nature, and a lot of my friends' nature, we push ourselves hard. We that phrase, I hate it, work hard, play hard, but we do. Running and what we do in our free time is often a reflection of how hard we're pushing ourselves at work or in other aspects of our life. So um, again, goes back to the question you asked for, why don't I just run a half marathon? For me, that's not the focus. For me is just going, how far can I go? How far and how tough can I survive it? And that's what interests me.
Oh,
So I
Tan, that's
think,
brilliant. Sorry, go on quickly.
I was just to say, my younger self would probably say, dude, you need help.
Well, and that's a brilliant place to finish it. I'm sure many people watching and listening to this will think, yeah, I know what he means. I've been there. I need some help as well. So thank you so much for sharing so much of your
Thank you for having
fascinating
me.
story. No, you are more than welcome. And thank you everybody for listening today to Running Tales on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this show, please listen to our back catalogue. easy for me to say, and give us a rating or review, a positive rating or review wherever you're having a listen. And of course, check out all of the other shows on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. There are lots of brilliant shows on there, and I mean, I can highly recommend them all. So yeah, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you to Tarne for joining us, and I'm Craig